Turn our Bibles to Galatians chapter 2. Verse 20. Galatians chapter 2, verse 20. I have been crucified with Christ, and it is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And the life that I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. I do not nullify the grace of God, for if righteousness were through the law, then Christ died for no purpose. Let's pray. Lord God, we desire only that you would become our all. That to be crucified with you and to die, for us it's a scary thought to lose in our minds the things that we love, the things that are worth living for, and to surrender it all. But I pray that we would be set free as you, Lord God, draw us near. That as we come to know you, we would see that you are worth all, that you are our complete and absolute satisfaction and significance. And so we thank you for today. We thank you that you are good. In Jesus' name, amen. If you look at Galatians chapter 2, verse 20, it talks about being crucified with Christ. To be crucified is one of the most heinous things in the Roman Empire. It is reserved for the most heinous people and criminals and people that they wanted to make an example out of. They wanted to show the rest of the world, hey, if you are this evil, then we will crucify you and we will make an example of you, because we will show to the rest of the world that if you do anything like this, then you deserve to die like this in the most painful and heinous way. And so when you read this verse, and this is my life verse, to hear, I have been crucified with Christ, what the author is saying, what Paul is claiming to all of us, is that this is my greatest reality. To be crucified with Christ is my greatest reality. Why would you want to say that? Why would you want that to be your greatest reality? Why would you want to tell everyone in the world, you know what my greatest reality is? I have been crucified with Christ. And when you hear that, everyone during that time would be like, why would you say that? Crucifixion is the worst thing that you could want for your life. Why would you say that that is your reality? That it is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And so we're going to unpack this. And the three things that I'm going to tell you today, the first is this. Our greatest reality is that we are crucified with Christ, and it must be. You have to figure this out. One way or the other, either Christ and the crucifixion you have with him is your greatest reality, or you and all that you love will always be your greatest reality. Number two, to be crucified means that we have found our satisfaction and our significance in dying, in death. Okay? And we're going to unpack that. And the third, final thing that we're going to talk about, to be crucified means this: Christ becomes central, because we who are in our flesh, who continue to sin, need him to be central to everything, not us. Okay? And you'll figure that out as you understand what to be crucified means. For Paul, before Christ, his reality was that he was infinitely respected and loved for his righteousness. Paul was this. Paul was Hebrew of Hebrews. He was the most respected man. He learned under Gamaliel. Gamaliel was the smartest and most brilliant man, and Paul was his disciple. And so when Paul walked into a room, everyone loved him. Imagine being some sort of a celebrity in the religious world. right? Imagine if you were Piper or Keller or somebody. Whenever I see my friends' Facebook pages, they're all like, yo, I got a picture with Tim Keller. And, they take a picture with him and they're like, oh, check it out. It's almost like if you love LeBron or if you love basketball players, soccer players, and you're like, yo, check it out. I took a picture with my star. And so this was what it was like. Apostle Paul was the greatest. Oh, that's worse. He was the single greatest disciple of the most brilliant man. And when Apostle Paul walked into a synagogue, when he would teach, when he would say anything, everyone would fall and say, yes, teach us more. What is it that you have for us? And I want more of that. A lot of the people in this world, they look at celebrities, people from K-pop to K-drama to movies and all sorts of things. And if they do their hair a certain way, you want to do your hair a certain way. If they act a certain way, they act that way. I remember there was a Korean movie called My Sassy Girl a long time ago. And when that movie came out, this girl was very mean to her boyfriend. And every time that they would do stuff, she would hit him and do all sorts of mean things to him. And then after that movie, all of a sudden, all the girls were sassy, right? They were and then they would hit their boyfriends and they would walk off and do weird stuff. And everyone was like, why are girls so mean? That movie, it changed everything. This is what occurs in our lives. We watch something and then we go, you know what? That's cool. Getting a tattoo here is cool. Living your life this way is cool. Acting whatever way you want, that's cool. The crazy thing was, Apostle Paul is the pinnacle of everything that everyone would ever want in this religion. That Apostle Paul was the man that you needed to be under, and when you mentioned his name, you would be like, oh, you go to his church? Solid. You go to the right church. You learn the right things. And so in that way, Apostle Paul was respected, loved, cherished. He taught the right things. He lived the right way. And he was the most passionate man you would ever find. He taught everyone to wait for the Messiah. There is coming someone who's greater than anyone we will ever know. And I want you to wait for him like I'm waiting for him. And when they taught him that, everyone was willing to listen. You know when his world fell apart? Acts chapter 9. Verse 4. This is when Apostle Paul went from celebrity to doo-doo. And that's the exact word. His whole life was made undone. Acts chapter 9 verse 4 says this, and falling to the ground, he heard a voice saying to him, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? And he said, who are you, Lord? And he said, I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting. What happened to Apostle Paul was that he was the most religious, jealous, righteous person who's ever lived. He stayed away from all bad things in life and he lived to be pure and perfect in his pursuit of God. And then Jesus came to him and said, remember the Messiah that you are telling everyone to love and wait for? Why are you persecuting me? Can you imagine if you lived your whole life telling everyone this is what you need to do, and that person that you had been preaching, teaching, and waiting for comes to you and says, your whole life, everything you've ever done, you have destroyed me, and you have destroyed everyone from loving me. Everything that he's ever believed, everything that he's ever fought for, fell apart that day. What if your dream and your vision and your life was to become a doctor, and you studied since you were in junior high, and your parents told you, be a doctor, be a surgeon, and all you did was study and study and study, straight A's. When you got an A-, your parents were like, what is wrong with you? And then you kept going and going, straight A's through college, and then you got into med school, and then you went to the best med school in the world, and Johns Hopkins, and as you're graduating, what if everything that you have ever lived for, you thought this would make you happy? And on the day before you graduate med school and get into the residency of your dreams, what if you find out that you're going to die that day? What if your entire life that you had fought for, built up, and you were going to do whatever it is that you dreamt of, what if that day you were told that it ends? Because that's what happened to Paul. Everything that he has ever believed, that everything that he's ever worked, every character trait, every person he's ever loved, everything that he was all about was undone that day. Because Jesus looked at him and said, the person that you have built your life around, you are persecuting me. And his life fell apart. His reality was shattered. How many of you have ever experienced your reality fall apart before your eyes? Everything that you thought your life was going to be. And that's what happened to Apostle Paul. He became someone who used to be cherished and was a champion, who was celebrated, who was loved in his community and his fellowship, and everyone in the known world would say, man, Paul is awesome. He went from this person to his life falling apart. And then whenever he would show up to a Christian church, they would be like, oh, that guy? Don't listen to that guy. He used to try to kill us. Every time you walk in, what if someone was like, don't listen to that guy. His life in his past and what he does, that shady at best. Don't listen to that guy. Why would you want to go from being a celebrity, loved and cherished by every person you meet, to give all of that up for your life to fall apart, and then for every person you meet for years upon years until your death to be like, I don't really trust that guy? What would make him give that up? He is no longer a champion. He is no longer good. He is no longer loved. He is no longer cherished. Why would he give that up to live a life where it was hard, where he was stoned, where he was rejected? Here's the reason why. Because the crucifixion removed his righteousness so that he could finally see Christ. Let me tell you that again. For the first time in his life, all the good in him that he thought that he had built up, that was standing in the way of knowing Christ. Everything that he did, telling people, you know what? You need to live better. You need to stop doing drugs, and you need to stop dating, and you need to stop living your life this way and live righteously. Stop gossiping. Stop doing this and that. And he lived that way, telling everyone, give up all these evil things and live righteously for Christ. And he lived in such a way until that judgment and righteousness was taken away. He couldn't see Christ. Because in that very righteousness he demanded of others and of himself, he was killing the church and he was killing everyone around him. And when that moment happened, where Jesus said, your righteousness is killing and persecuting me, and it fell apart. For the first time in his life, he saw Christ say, now my grace is for you. Because you are no longer standing on what you do for me. I live for you. I give up things for you. I teach other people about you. And Jesus was like, the funny thing is, your whole life is about me, and yet you don't know me. And it was your righteousness, it was your zeal, it was your perfection and everything you do for the church that stood in the way of knowing me. What was crucified with Christ? His work, his righteousness, his zeal, his passions. He would talk about Jesus more than anyone else, and the word he used, Mashiach, Messiah in the Jewish culture, but it was the same. He was talking about Jesus. He would do more than anyone else in the entire world would do for the Messiah, and yet he didn't know Christ. Finally, when Jesus came to him and said, are you finally going to stop standing on your own righteousness, your own love for me? And when that fell apart, he finally saw Christ. Let me tell you 2 parts of why this is the most difficult thing in the world. For us, human beings, for us, the way that we live this life, why this idea of being crucified with Christ, our righteousness being taken away, this is the scariest thing for me, for you and I. And I'll tell you why. Why Christianity doesn't work for most people is because it's not a religion. You can't try your way into salvation. You can't be good enough. You can't join enough communities. You can't go to enough Bible studies to ever be saved. This is the reason why Christianity is so difficult, because you can't accomplish it. Either He takes away your righteousness, takes away the scales from your eyes, and tells you now that you cannot earn it. Will you surrender all that you are to me? And will you let me love you as a sinner? That is hard for us. So here are the 2 things. To be crucified with Christ, the first is that it is no longer I who live. Let me tell you why the invitation to die never makes sense to us. You know why? Because we love things. I'm going to describe some of the things in this life that you and I love. And I want you to think about the things that you love. You love doing, you love eating, all that kind of stuff. Yesterday, we went, my wife and I, with, few people, and we were on a double date, and we went, Stephen and Yuna, they came over, we had dinner, we went to this cute little cafe where there was at night, there were these little cute lights, and it was beautiful. And I remember taking the picture, and I was like, damn, that is sick. I'm going to come back here all the time. I'm not going to tell you where it is, because I don't want you to be there, okay? But over there, as we were sitting, people love that. I love that. I love when it's quiet, and I love when nobody's running around and screaming and all that kind of stuff. And I just get to sit with my thoughts or a book and just drink a latte and maybe have a croissant. Maybe that gives me joy. That makes me happy. For others of you, there are other things that give you joy. Let me tell you some of the things that make you happy. You and I love laughing. We love laughing more than anything else. This is why we go to comedian shows, why we love funny people. And some of the girls, when you ask them a list of things that they look for in a mate, they're like, I want a funny person, right? Because they don't want to sit there and be like, right? They want someone who can say things and have a conversation and make them laugh. And so you're like, I want a funny guy, because you want to laugh. You want to enjoy. You want someone that you can walk down Walmart with and they'll start dancing for no reason. And you're like, oh, that's cute. And they start dancing and running or whatever it is. We love laughing. I have a bunch of pastor friends. We don't talk about church. We don't talk about how we're hurting. We don't talk about all the terrible things in this world. We sit there and we laugh. We play together. That's what we do. And when someone brings up something about their church, we're like, shh, this is not the time. We're here to laugh. Because we love laughing until our stomachs start cringing and we feel like we're doing ab workout, and we love rolling on the ground to a point when if people make us one last time, I think we're going to die because there's no more air left. We love that. You know why? Because as you get older, things get tougher. As you get married, you have children who want video games more than they want you, and all these difficult things start happening in your life. And when your wife or spouse is looking at you like, are you going to do the dishes? And you're like, aren't you going to do the dishes? When those moments happen, and everything in life just seems difficult and hard, you want to laugh. You want someone to say something or do something, and you want to grab your stomach and you want to laugh. This is why it's hard, because we are people who love laughing. Number 2, we find fullness of life when we do something athletic, sports-oriented, when the endorphins are released. Some people love running 26.2 miles. Why would you love running? Like when I used to be made to run a mile in PE, I wanted to punch someone because I was like, who made these rules? But there are people in this world, like during the snowstorm, I would drive and they are running in the snowstorm with like shorts. And I'm like, what are you doing? Because for them, when they run, they feel alive. They feel like this is living. And I'm like, you need a new hobby. Some people love playing sports They work 80 hours a week talking and doing business, inputting computations and all that. But when they step on the basketball court in their church league where no one cares, no one is watching, but they make the final shot and all their boys jump up. It's not even the NCAA tournament. No one cares, no one's watching. But they stand up and they celebrate like they won the championship. You know why? Because they love it. They love the camaraderie. They love the sports. They love being able to compete. That's what gives them joy. Gives them joy. We find fullness of life when we think about the wedding day that we have been thinking about since we were babies. Some, not boys, most boys don't. But some boys do, I guess. But some girls, they've been thinking about their wedding since they were a child, right? They take toilet paper and they make a toilet dress and they walk around and they imagine what their dress is going to look like, right? And there have been women who I've sat around, and when they talk about their job, they look like they want to kill someone. They hate it. You know, they're like, I hate my job. I can't wait to get out of this job, right? And they talk about all these different things that they hate. They hate their friends. They hate their phone. They hate their parents. They hate all of this. And then you bring up, hey, so wedding? And then they're like, yes. I am going to have a wedding where I drink iced tea out of mason jars, and I'm going to pluck wild flowers from the grass, and I'm going to put it in mason jars, and we're going to be outside on a picnic table, and no one gets to wear shoes, and we're going to be at a barn, and I'm going to have like a circle of flowers on my head, and I'm not going to wear these big, ugly, poofy dresses, but I'm going to wear something chic and flowing in the wind. And then they just start talking, and all the people are like, okay. But that's when they come alive, because they want to be someone who's chic, who doesn't care. They want to be someone who's not uptight. And they come alive when they talk about their wedding. There are other people who come alive when they talk about their kids. Some of the parents I talk to, they're like, I hate everything except my kid, because my kid goes to the best school and he's going to be a doctor or a lawyer. And they light up and they call all their friends and tell them what school they went to, where they got accepted, and what practice, and all sorts of things. And they lie about everything, right? They're like, the house is so big that we have to call each other to find. And it's like tiny house, but they still lie to their friends about their kids and all the things that they do. Why? Because they find life in it. Everyone in this world is looking for something, and when they find it, they love it. We're not all the same. And when we find whatever it is we love, we talk about it endlessly. Some of you could look at a painting for 4 hours and talk about the color and whatever, right? And then others of you can look at it for a second and be like, done. We all have something that makes us come alive, and we want to share it with the world. And so now Facebook and Instagram and all sorts of things have given us a platform to tell everyone what we love. This is when I feel alive. This is when I feel good about myself. You know why the words of Christ saying, die, be crucified, you don't like it, is because it is the opposite of what makes you happy. And so in your mind, what religion has become is this. You have had pastors and teachers and religion say, sacrifice. If you truly love Christ, give it up. Give up art. Give up your marriage. Give up money. Give up all these things that you're dreaming about. And when you give it up, maybe not have a wedding. Go to a court. Don't have mason jars. And in your heart, you're like, can I give up my mason jars for Christ? Most of you are like, no. Jesus can be part of it, but not my mason jars. Because in your mind and heart, you're like, I don't want to be in some country in Africa telling people about Jesus instead of having the wedding of my life, instead of enjoying my kids, instead of living in a place where I love living and jogging and all these things. And in your heart, you feel like what the Bible keeps saying is die, die, die. Die to your loves. Die to things that make you happy. This is the reason why you have never met Christ. Because you think religion is telling you, give up things to meet Christ. And what Christ was saying was that when you meet me, you will be totally satisfied and your significance will be totally met. And I will not ask you to give things up. You will lay them down whenever you need, whenever someone else needs, not because some religion or some pastor or other people are telling you, but because He is your satisfaction. Apostle Paul, he says it. He says, for me to live is Christ and to die is gain. What he was saying was, I am not telling you more religion. I am not telling you to give up more things. When I found Him, I have found all that I've ever wanted. No one had to tell me to go on a mission trip. No one had to tell me to sacrifice this and that for me. I had found what my heart was always looking for. The reason why religion is hard is because before you meet Christ, you try to give things up. Because you're trying so hard to justify that Christ is real to yourself and other people by giving things up and saying, oh, this makes Jesus real. You giving up stuff doesn't make Jesus any more real than anything else in this world. But when you meet Him, when you know Him, when He becomes your all, and that you cannot try to do, then it becomes a fruit that the world sees. This passage is not a description for you to live a certain way. This passage is a description of what occurs when you meet Him. Do you understand that difference? The Bible is not telling you how to live, because each of us will live differently. Each of us have been made different. Each of us love different things. You love art, you love engineering, you love math. You are different. I love chess. I love cafes with little lattes and lights. You are an individual who must figure out in your own life, when He becomes your all, what your life looks like. He's not asking you to give up stuff so that you will know Him. He says, know me and live for the first time. John Piper describes it this way: God is absolutely most glorified when I am fully satisfied in Him. Jonathan Edwards, one of the greatest theologians in the world, he says, God's purpose for my life was that I have passion for God's glory, and that I also have a passion for my joy in that glory, and that these two are the one and same passion. For many of you, the things that you love and want is completely contrary to wanting Christ. And in your mind, the church tells you, give up what you love so you can have Christ. And what Christ was saying, when you have me, you can finally, for the first time, figure out what you love. Because you will not be an empty vessel looking for a man to fulfill your needs or some wedding to fulfill your emptiness. You're not looking for some degree or the man in front of you or anyone else to tell you what your worth is. For the first time, you are so fully satisfied and so significant in God's eyes that for the first time you can say, this is what I truly love. But many of you are like, I think that house will make me happy. I think that job will make me happy. I think this girl would make me happy. And you sit there and you dream about it. And when you have it, you find that it's lacking and you give it up. You get married and it's not enough. When you have a child, it's not enough. When you get whatever you want, it's not enough. Why? Because He's saying you will never find true satisfaction in anything apart from me. Because your satisfaction and significance is in me alone. This is what Tim Keller says. The essence of gospel humility is not thinking more of myself or thinking less of myself. When I meet young Christians and they're passionate about God, they're like, Pastor Bobby, I don't want to think about myself and I don't want to think about this and I want to give everything up. And I'm telling them, like, why? Why do you want to give this up and why do you want to suffer? And they're like, in that way I can love Christ. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He is most glorified when you are satisfied in Him, not giving up stuff so that you can find Him. Because giving up and trying and living and being passionate, that doesn't make you fall in love with Christ. When He finds you, then you begin to live your life. And he says, true gospel humility means I stop connecting every experience, every conversation with myself. In fact, I stop thinking about myself. You know why you stop thinking about yourself? Because you are so satisfied deeply, even in your failures. Have you ever failed at something and felt the presence of God in your failure? Because He doesn't change because you fail. He is more present and He loves you. A truly gospel humble person is not a self-hating person or a self-loving person, but a gospel humble person. The truly gospel humble person is a self-forgetful person whose ego is just like his or her toes. It just works. The toes doesn't draw attention to itself. The toes just work. They work. The ego just works. Don't you want to be the kind of person when they see themselves in the mirror or reflected in a shop window that you do not admire what you see, but you also don't cringe either? How many of girls have looked in a mirror at a mall, at a store, and they're like, ooh? Or how many of them have looked in the mirror and they're like, nice? What the Bible is saying, if you actually meet Christ and He is all of your satisfaction, when you walk by that mirror, you don't care. Because that's you. On a bad hair day, it's you. On a good hair day, it's you. And you, yourself, is loved infinitely by a God who will never change. But if you don't have Him, everything you own and every word someone says and every person you date and everything you will ever see is about you and how you feel about yourself. Jesus says this in Matthew 16:25. Whoever would save his life, and this is with all the stuff, will lose it. But whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit a man if he gains the entire world, but he forfeits his soul? You know what's beautiful? When I was a teenager, every day I thought about the big pimples on my face, right? I would get pimples, I still get pimples, and I'm like almost 40. When I was a kid, all the pretty girls, you know, the popular girls at school would come around and be like, hey, Bobby, you have another pimple. And I would be like, and I would be so self-conscious about the pimple and all. It's like one little dot with one little white dot on my nose. Sophomore year in college, I got into a car accident where my face went through the windshield. I had 100 stitches, 8 hours of stitching on my face. I looked like Two-Face from Batman. At that point, I had a choice. Do I want to walk around as someone who is two-faced? Do I want to wear a mask? What kind of mask should I buy? Or am I fully, singly satisfied in the fact that Christ loves me? Every time my aunts and uncles would see me, they would always be like, you need to get plastic surgery on that eye. And I would be like, no, this is me. I'm not saying plastic surgery is whatever, but I am just saying I'm okay being me. For in these scars, there was a moment with God when He said, the pain you feel right now is nothing. In the 8 hours when I was bleeding and there was just undescribable pain, as they were stitching my face up, God had whispered in my heart and said, my son went through far more so that you would know me. And I wept at that table. These scars mean a lot to me because it was a moment with Christ. Do you see what Paul is saying? It's not a religion. I did the religion all of my life. I tried harder than anyone else, but when I met Christ, nothing else mattered. No one can define me ever again. My satisfaction and my significance will never change because He doesn't change His mind. He called me His own. Either you know it or you don't. Christ gave everything so that you do not let anyone else in the world define your beauty, your significance, your strength, and your worth. Secondly, to be crucified with Christ means this. But Christ who lives in me. What Apostle Paul is saying is that when you for the first time are crucified and you die and you discover that you are fully and completely satisfied in Him, Christ actually becomes central to your life and to your church and to your relationships and to everything else in the entire world. When you go to med school, when you go to dental school, when you go and be a nurse, when you are a realtor, when you are picking up trash, when you are living your life as a writer, whatever it is that you do, Christ becomes central to whatever it is. Because it's not your job that gives you significance. It's not your hair, it's not your clothes, it's not how skinny you are, it's not, can you imagine a world where you determine someone's worth by how they look? Can you imagine what darkness must be in your heart in order for you to judge yourself and everyone around you by the money that they own, the things that they have, and the way that they look? Think about the darkness that would consume your soul. But when Christ comes and He sets you free and He says, you, despite your face, despite what people say, despite anything, you are mine and you are my all, then for the first time you're able to look out and love someone that before you would never be able to love. And for the first time in your life, you can see the world in the eyes of the kingdom and the Father. And the broken things become beautiful and worth investing in. I'll finish with this. How does Christ become central? This should help. You guys know I love movies, right? Shawshank Redemption, I love it. If you're of age, watch the movie. It's really good. I love Forrest Gump. I even do voices for you. I love Matrix. And when Matrix came out, some of you guys never saw Matrix. After that movie came out, every youth group retreat had a Matrix theme. Like, someone was always dodging bullets, in the retreat. Ben-Hur is an awesome movie, but that's for people much older. Gladiator, awesome, right? I'm going to tell you about a movie that people love passionately. Some people, they have the DVD, the video cassette, the Blu-ray, and whatever else. The movie is Titanic, okay? Titanic is a love story, right? But Titanic is also historical because it's a boat, okay? I'm going to ruin the movie for you. The boat sinks, okay? The boat hits an iceberg and the boat sinks, okay? So don't be disappointed when the boat starts sinking. Everyone knows the boat sinks, okay, when you go watch the movie. But what you go to watch the movie for is the love story, right, between Jack and Rose, okay? After this movie, I don't know how many retreats I've seen, like where two boys are holding each other and one boy has his arms raised and the other one's behind him holding him and he's like, Rose, and okay? This movie changed a lot of stuff. This movie became an all-time favorite, and this movie also became a very painful thing for husbands. Because when husbands and wives watch this movie, the wife inevitably turns around, looks at the husband and says, "Why can't you love me like this?" And the husband's like, "Who can love like that?" This movie changed everything because it's about that love story. It's about how Jack, who has nothing, he's poor, nobody loves him, and he is running around living free. And Rose is just this bound girl who's engaged. The whole world seems locked up, and she feels like she's in prison. And this boy who is free comes to rescue her, and their love comes together. And there's some bad scenes you shouldn't watch. But then, the love happens. What if you were asked to come out for this movie and to be one of the actors? So you show up at a casting, and then they go, "All right, I want you to do this line for me." And you say the line, and they're like, "I think you're going to be awesome." And they write down, "You're going to be sailor number 2. Okay? And you're like, "Sailor number 2, is that awesome?" They're like, "Yeah, that's one of the best roles." You know why? Because when the boat is sinking, you're sailor number 2 who jumps off the boat, and when you jump, you're going to scream, "Ah!" That's your line. Can you do "ah," right? And you're like, "I can do "ah," right? And so you get really excited about your line, and they're like, "Are they going to see my face?" They're going to see half your face. Okay? They're going to see like your side view, and as you jump off, they're going to hear your scream, "Ah!" Okay? I need you to go home and practice screaming. For 6 months, all you do is scream at your house. You get to the set, you're on a little tiny thing that looks like a boat. You jump off on a blue screen because they're going to add the rest of the ocean and all that stuff. And as you jump off, you give it all. You scream like it's your job you were born for. "Ah!" And the director's like, "You are the greatest sailor number 2 we've ever had." You finish the movie comes out. You invite all of your church, all of your family, everyone in the whole world, and you say, "You know what? I'm going to pay for all your tickets. I'm in Titanic." And everyone's like, so they all show up. And we're all sitting there watching the movie. And the guy, right? One of our guys, and he's like, "Yeah, sailor number 2. And he's excited for his scene. The boat cracks. Everyone is running around. Jack and Rose is doing the love story. We're captivated by the love story. All of a sudden, your scene comes up, and you jump, and you hear, "Ah!" And it's like a tiny dot in the corner, right? You can barely see it. Like jumping off, and we can barely see your face. What if you go, "Pause. Everyone, check it out. That's me." Actually, you know what? Can you rewind that? Let's watch it again. Ah! Awesome, right? What if you did that over and over, and the rest of us are like, "Let us watch the movie. I want to know what happens to Jack and Rose." And you're like, "But that's not important. Look at me. I'm sailor number 2. All of history is about Christ. You have 3 seconds in this world. You are but a whisper in a wind. All of us spend all of our lives telling other people, "I am significant. Look at my 3 seconds." If you remain apart from Christ, that's all you are. Sailor number 2, screaming at the world and saying, "Look at my house, look at the car I drive, look at my hair, look at the girl I married, look at this." And your 3 seconds, you're telling the world, "Look at my everything. This is who I am." And it is 3 seconds, and it is insignificant. But for you, you want everyone to know it. But if your 3 seconds is part of the grand narrative of Christ, and He becomes your all as you die, and He becomes your satisfaction and significance, you are part of the most beautiful, powerful story that saves sinners and the broken people in this world. What will you live for? Will you live for your 3 seconds, or will you live for the one thing that can save a world that is falling apart with its own sins? You have to answer. Let's pray. Do you want to be sailor number 2 for the rest of your life? Because if you're sailor number 2, your failures removes your significance. But if you're part of the grand narrative, then you become essential. Your failures become essential. Your brokenness becomes essential. Losing a child, losing someone you love, losing a job. Everything becomes essential because you are part of God's way of reaching a broken world. But if it's about your grade, if it's about your school, if it's about how significant you are, it's how smarter you are than everyone else, how rich you are than everyone else, then you have to fight more than any other. You have to be prettier than any other. You have to be more splendor, more skinny, more this and more that than any other. And it's 3 seconds that no one cares in the grand idea of history and of the significance and importance of this world. But if you are part of His story, every tear you ever shed, every loss you've ever felt means infinite good for the kingdom. What will you do? Where will you find your significance? Where will you find your satisfaction? I hope that you can answer today. And I hope you can ask and invite Him to meet with you.